Hello, and welcome to another episode of Currently Speaking, the podcast of the Current Consulting Group. I'm Bill Current, president and founder of the Current Consulting Group. And today we're going to talk about some workplace drug abuse issues. In fact, I'm going to title this Workplace Drug Abuse Too Scary to Ignore. But before I get started, if you'd like to watch or listen to any past episodes of Currently Speaking, go to our website at currentconsultinggroup.com. You'll find an archive of our past webinar episodes, our past podcast episodes, past blog posts that we've published, etc. And we invite you to go there and take a look and listen to past episodes of Currently Speaking. So let's go ahead and get started. Workplace drug abuse is not always easy to identify, but sometimes it's so obvious and scary that it cannot be ignored. Take, for instance, the recently reported case of a woman who was operating a school bus with more than 50 children on board while she was under the influence of alcohol. According to one report, the driver was driving so erratically that witnesses were calling 911 to report her unsafe behavior. The driver finally plowed into a snowbank, bringing her bus to a stop. The driver had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.331%. That's more than 4 times the legal limit of 0.08% in Pennsylvania. According to the report, she also tested positive for delta-9 carboxy-THC, marijuana. The driver was charged with driving under the influence, 54 counts each of endangering the welfare of children and reckless endangerment, as well as other related summary charges and offenses. It begs the question, was the school bus driver tested for drugs prior to being hired? And was the driver subject to random drug and alcohol testing after she was hired? Is the driver still employed to operate a school bus? And if so, will she be required to complete some type of return to duty program, hopefully supervised by a substance abuse professional, and then be subject to follow-up testing? Thankfully, none of the children aboard the bus were seriously injured. But the entire incident highlights this obvious fact. Workplace substance abuse, including alcohol and marijuana, remains a serious problem in American workplaces. President Trump signed an executive order that will reclassify marijuana as a Schedule III drug rather than a Schedule I substance where it clearly belongs. And there are people who fear that this will result in DOT losing the authority to require transportation industry companies to test for marijuana. Their concerns are legitimate, and I don't want to minimize them. However, a survey of employers conducted in 2025 by the Current Consulting Group indicates that drug testing in general and testing for marijuana specifically are less about federal regulations and more about safety. When asked, what are the leading reasons for establishing and maintaining a drug testing program for your company, the largest percentage, 78%, said safety, followed by 61% who said to comply with the DOT regulations. The survey also found that many companies, 44%, conduct drug testing to ensure that they hire the best possible job candidates, which arguably leads to employing safer workers. And 50% said it was to minimize legal risks. But perhaps the most significant finding of the survey came from the question about the effectiveness of drug testing, wherein 84% said they believe it works, that it is helping them maintain safer workplaces. Also, 62% said drug testing enables them to hire better quality employees. Now let's go back in time to a workplace-related accident that cost 5 people their lives. Consider the hot air balloon accident that occurred in 2021 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The balloon crashed into a power line, causing the basket to detach from the envelope and plummet to the ground. 5 people, including the pilot, were killed. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, said that the crash was in part caused by the pilot's use of cocaine and cannabis. The official report stated, quote, contributing to the accident was the pilot's use of impairing illicit drugs. Some impairing effects of THC would likely have been present that would have affected the pilot's ability to successfully operate the balloon. These 2 examples, the Pennsylvania school bus driver and the New Mexico hot air balloon operator, are not isolated examples of workplace substance abuse and its direct and negative effect on safety. The legalization of marijuana has resulted in more people using marijuana, and a disturbing number who admit to using it on their way to work or while on the job. According to a survey of more than 1,000 people who were employed and who admitted to being illicit drug users, 68.9% admitted to using drugs while working. This includes 28.2% who admit to getting high on the way to work, 22.8% while on their lunch break, 11.5% in the afternoon while at work, 10.5% in the morning while at work, and 18.8% who said they weren't particular about when they use drugs during the workday, indicating that they'll get high anytime. These results confirmed those of other reports. According to a survey of 500 marijuana users, 77% said they use marijuana at home before leaving for work. 48% said they use at work, on a break, or while actually working, and 30% said they use marijuana on the way to work. There was a report a few years ago from First Advantage that remains pertinent to the discussion about workplace substance abuse. As one of the largest providers of employee screening services, including drug testing, First Advantage works with thousands of companies. Analyzing drug test results from their vast client base, the company identified two interesting trends, which were highlighted in a special report entitled Pre-Employment Drug Screening Correlated to Lower Post-Accident Drug Screening Positivity. The two interesting results were, first, some customers facing open frontline positions and staffing shortages opted to pause their pre-employment drug screening programs to get candidates on board faster. And second, during the same period, nearly all industries saw an increase in positive results from post-accident drug testing. In other words, the drop in pre-employment drug testing meant companies were likely hiring more drug users. The increase in post-accident positive drug test results tells us these substance abusing new hires were having a definite impact on workplace safety. Quoting from the report, quote, based on the data, increased drug use in the past year may have played a role in the increased drug positivity rates. Pre-employment drug screens, or the lack thereof, may also play a role in employee post-accident drug test positivity. Could pre-employment drug screening serve as a deterrent for drug use and set expectations that employees should be able to pass a drug test if needed? The data appeared to support this, end quote. Now, according to First Advantage, the industries that saw the highest increases were transportation at 74%, education at 52%, restaurants at 40%, technology at 28%, healthcare at 28%, trucking at 24%, manufacturing at 24%, and retail at 15%. Quoting from the report again, quote, when post-accident drug positivity for clients who do pre-employment drug screening is compared to that of clients who do not, the rate of change is pronounced. Clients that performed pre-employment drug screening experienced a 17% increase in post-accident positivity rates from 2019 to 2020, while clients that did not perform pre-employment drug screening saw their post-accident rates more than double during that same period, end quote. Here's one more blast from the past. On January 4th, 1987, an Amtrak train traveling at over 100 miles per hour crashed into a set of Conrail locomotives just outside of Chase, Maryland, killing 14 passengers on the Amtrak train, as well as the Amtrak engineer and lounge car attendant. Of the 660 passengers on the train that night, another 174 were injured. The NTSB thoroughly investigated the crash and found that both the Conrail conductors tested positive for marijuana. NTSB determined the engineer's use of marijuana was the quote-unquote probable cause for the accident. This tragedy brought national attention to the dangers of marijuana use by workers, and the U.S. Department of Transportation responded immediately. The Federal Railroad Administration strengthened its drug and alcohol procedures for train crews right away, and the other major DOT agencies created and implemented what we call DOT-regulated drug testing. 4 years later, the U.S. Congress required drug testing of all safety-sensitive transportation-related workers. Now, in conclusion, drug testing has proven to be a powerful deterrent to drug use and an effective way to identify people who need help. And while drug testing cannot prevent all workplace accidents from occurring, it can help deter some drug-abusing job applicants from applying for work with your company. deter some employees from getting high on the way to work or using drugs, including alcohol, while on the job. It can reduce the number of workers injured in drug-related workplace accidents, reduce the number of workers' compensation claims filed, and reduce the overall costs associated with workplace drug abuse. Of course, employers must always comply with applicable laws and regulations, including state legal marijuana laws, some of which have a direct impact on drug-free workplace programs. But employers hold the key to maintaining safe, productive, and drug-free workplaces by maintaining legally compliant and scientifically sound drug testing programs that include job applicants and employees. Workplace drug abuse may not always be easy to spot in the moment, but without a doubt, the negative consequences of having employees under the influence or drug impaired while on the job are just too scary to ignore. Well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Currently Speaking. If you'd like to listen to or watch past episodes of Currently Speaking, go to our website at currentconsultinggroup.com, and you'll find an archive of past podcast episodes, webinars that we've done, as well as blog posts that we've published. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again on another episode of Currently Speaking.